Hey friends, welcome back to Stones Hill Homestead. This is Kim, and today I am canning banana pepper rings. These are some banana peppers, sweet banana peppers that I grew in my garden, and I'm just going to pick out these, the best size for these. I am pulling out some big ones for another recipe, but I wanted you to see these banana peppers. I'm stemming them. And then I will be deseeding them, taking out the seeds and that center piece to cut rings. So I'm just cutting the rings here, as you can see, about 1/8 to a 1/4 inch thick. And I'm using this deseeding tool or decoring tool or coring tool for peppers. And I haven't got the hang of it. It's brand new. I saw it. I got one for me and my girls. And I'm just checking it out, seeing how it works. And right now, I'm not quite sure what I think of it yet, but it appears that it has a cutting tool to cut the rings, and then it has that spiral end to get it out, get those seeds out so you don't have seeds floating in your jar. And I think it's going to be great. I just wasn't quite sure on how to use it yet. Putting those rings in the jar. I'm going to get me a scrap bowl here in a minute, but right now I'm just going to cut these into nice 1/4 inch rings and get all these peppers sliced up. Now, I've never done banana pepper rings, but the reason I thought I would try them is we like them on pizza, and I do buy them a lot. So I thought rather than buy them, I needed to try and figure out how to do them. Here I am going in with that core again. I'm going to try my hand at it another time. It seems to be working fairly good. Once I got the hang of it, it worked really nice, and that whole core comes right out, as you can see laying down there on the cutting board. But I was really happy with it. And I do end up cleaning these again just to make sure I get the seeds out, and I'm just going back in and cutting them again. But anyway, these banana pepper rings, I've had cowboy candy, which we absolutely love. We have other like peppercini peppers, which I also purchase at the store, but I thought I would try my hand at this. So I found this recipe from Old World Garden Farms, and I did do this recipe. However, I did take some keynotes from another recipe that I saw to make sure that I had the best flavor of brine. And you will see when I'm making the brine that I do mess up a little bit, so I'm going to tell you what not to do. But it ended up all working out fine, but I wanted you to know that. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be using these pepper rings for, but I do make Mississippi pot roast as well. And I thought a pint jar of these would be perfect for a roast. Like I said, pizza toppings, salad toppings. We just use them for a lot of things. So I'm still working on it. I'm showing you my Cutco knife. Normally I have a vegetable knife that I use. However, Cutco I got all my knives sharpened this last week, and they are 100% guaranteed and lifetime guaranteed. There were some of the blades that needed to be resharpened, or one had to be replaced, which happened to be my vegetable knife. And they send them back for me. They were all sharpened. I ended up with 20 of my knives getting sent back. I do have the full block, but the vegetable knife that I would be doing that's a little bit better knife for this kind of work is the one that's missing. But that knife that I showed you in the beginning here works quite well. And I'm still cleaning out these peppers and cutting up rings. I was at a thrift store this last week and I was thrilled to death. They had canning jars, so I bought about 2 dozen assorted sizes of canning jars, with most of them being the half pints jelly jar size. And I think I ended up with 5 pints and then a couple quarts jars for $6.25 for those 2 dozen jars. So I was really happy. I look everywhere for jars quite often: thrift stores, Goodwill, garage sales. I do whatever I can to get the jars at the least expensive price that I can. I'm sure you probably all do the same, but thrift stores are probably one of my favorite go-tos. It's something that I really enjoy doing. So here the rings are cut. They're ready to go. I've cleaned them, and you can see that they're all done, but I cut some hot ones as well. These are called salsa peppers, and they are going to give these jars a little bit of heat. My problem is I grew them in the garden, and they were supposed to be a dark green pepper. I'm not sure if they mismarked them, but it seems like everybody's been having trouble this year with these salsa peppers being this yellow color. So they have a little bit of spice to them, but they're not what I expected. Here's my compost bowl, and these big peppers I'm going to be using for another recipe, which I will be doing today as well, and I will share that in another video with you. But they're really nice size peppers, and then I'll be cutting them lengthwise, so they'll be cut a different way for this recipe, and I think we're really going to like it. Here I am getting ready to make the brine. And what I did here was I added 3 cups of cider vinegar. So apple cider vinegar. I'm going to be adding 3 cups of apple cider vinegar. And that's here's the first 2 cups. So I need another cup. And I'm going to recommend, if you follow this recipe, you immediately double the brine from the start. I didn't have enough, so I had to remake brine. Now I'll be adding 2 cups of filtered water to this brine. And again, don't use city water that has chlorine or fluoride. It might cloud up your water. It might take it'll be off taste. I'm not sure. I use well water or filtered water for all my recipes, and that seems to be the best for us. The next thing I'm going to go in here with, I'm going to be adding 3 teaspoons of pickling salt. And I make sure it's pickling salt. You don't want to use iodized salt, as it will cloud up your water. It just makes things look cloudy. You just don't want to have that in there. The next thing you see me adding, which I should not have done, is adding the mustard seed and the celery seed to the brine. After I read the recipe, those items should have been poured in the bottom of each jar, and it would have made it much better. So don't do what I do here. Follow the recipe. You're going to put in each jar a half a clove of garlic, 1.5 teaspoon of mustard seed, and 3/4 teaspoon of celery seed. And now these are making pint jars, but I did half pints. So I would have even reduced it even more. So what I ended up doing is I ended up putting all of the seasonings in the brine, including the garlic, but instead of the clove of garlic, I minced the garlic. It worked out fine in the end, but I just think it would have made it much easier for me to pour this brine into each jar. So I would do that better. Well, you're going to bring this brine up to a boil now. I'm going to pack the jars with the rings as well. And you're going to want to gently put those rings in those jars. And again, I use the 1/2 pint jars because this is a better quantity for Marlin and I. We don't need a big pint jar sitting in the fridge. When I open a jar, I want to be able to use it fairly quickly. Here I am also adding, which isn't in the recipe, I added some turmeric. I like how it makes the color in the peppers and in my pickles, and it has a taste. I don't add very much. It's not overpowering. It's just enough to do that. Here I am mincing the garlic. Now this is fresh garlic from my garden, and I'm going to mince. I think I ended up mincing 5 cloves of garlic total. And I'm using the Cutco mint or garlic press here, and it works great. I just hardly ever use it, and I was just trying it out, trying to figure out how I was going to get this all done. And I couldn't get the garlic out of there, and I was trying to figure out what to do here, so I ended up just taking it down into the brine, and you'll see that I just take it down there and swish it around in the brine just to get it out of there. I want that garlic. I just want that garlic out of there because the minced pieces just aren't coming out. I'm not quite sure. It's probably user error, but I'm just being real here. That's just what I do. Here I am back to the jars. I'm going to put those pepper rings that I cut into the jars, and I'm starting with a funnel, and I think I didn't really need it, but these hot peppers, I didn't have a lot, but I wanted to make sure that the 8 jars here are actually spicy. So I split these spicy peppers up between those 8 1/2 pint jars. And it'll just give each jar a little bit of heat. So these will be more like mild banana peppers or banana pepper rings. And I'm splitting them up in between all 8 jars. Now I end up with quite a few more jars, as you will see, that don't have any kind of hot pepper in it. So those will be what I would consider sweet peppers. Now, one of the recipes I looked at also suggested adding sugar, and they recommended that you add sugar to balance out those flavors. I wasn't quite sure about it, and I totally forgot about it. So I ended up adding 1/4 teaspoon. No, that is wrong. I added 1/8 teaspoon to each 1/2 pint jar at the end prior to pouring in the brine. And so that way the boiling brine goes down over the peppers, it melts that sugar, and I am gently pressing these rings down in. But I did end up adding that little bit of sugar to it. I used my pure cane sugar from Azure. And I was trying to figure out, how am I going to distinguish these pepper rings, the spicy ones, from the ones that didn't have any spicy pepper or hot pepper in it. So what I ended up doing was I had a little red bell pepper that it's a lunchbox pepper, if you will, if that's what they're called, but they were red, and I cut little rings of those. And you will see here that I put this little red pepper ring in each of these jars just to make sure I knew that these were the jars with the hot peppers in them, or those salsa peppers that you saw me split between the 8 jars. I just wanted to make sure that I knew which ones they were, and if I sent someone down to the canning shelf. So there's the red peppers. You can see them in there now. And here I'm going to start adding the brine. And I'm just going to ladle it in there. And this is where I realized, oh man, I shouldn't have put those spices in there. But it all ended up working out just fine. I'm just going through adding the ladle. I think I need a new ladle as well. I see other YouTubers or canners, they have one that's like a 2-cup ladle and it hooks on the side of the pan, and I need to find that, I think. So if you know what I'm talking about, and you've seen other people use them, I've actually think I've seen the Mennonite farmhouse, I believe the Mennonite farmhouse, I believe she uses one of those ladles that I'm referring to. So here they are all done. I'm debubbling. I'm just making sure that I've got plenty of fluid in there, plenty of brine that covers those peppers. I'm debubbling, and when I'm all done debubbling, I will get the lids on. And when you see me put the lids on, I just want to tell you up front, these lids I got during the pandemic, and I'm just trying to use them up. They are no brand. I have no idea even how to pronounce the brand, but we couldn't find canning jars, so I did order from Amazon. They are working fine. I've had no failures. However, I did buy some lids during the pandemic that I ended up throwing about 48 lids away. Maybe even more than that, maybe less. Maybe it was about 40. But either way, they were buckling, they were bending, they weren't working well, they weren't sealing. So rather than waste my time on it, I just decided I'm not using them. So now here I'm wiping each of the rims with vinegar. And as I do it, I am feeling these rims to make sure there's no chips, cracks, rough spots on those, because if it is, those jars will not seal because of a blemish on that rim. So you just saw me there. I ran my finger around it because I thought, ooh, that one felt rough. Well, it wasn't. It was just the jar itself. So I'm getting ready, and like I said, I'm going to put these rims on, or make sure these rims are clean, and then I'm going to start putting the lids. I have a magnetized lid lifter, and here I am putting that on there right now, and you'll see that these lids are no brand. I normally use 4 jars, Superb, Ball, and Kerr in that order. But because these lids were thicker, they looked like all the rubber seal was better quality, I decided I'm going to go ahead and try and use these today on these projects that I'm doing. And I've done a couple other projects. That one lid didn't hook onto my lid lifter right, so I re-rinsed it off. And I'm just finishing these up, getting these on, and then I'll put the rings on finger tight. The one thing that it said about these jars were the brine to be boiling, which I have kept the jars hot. The brine is boiling. And I want that water bath as near boiling as I can get it before putting the jars in. And the reason is you don't want to cook your pepper rings in that water bath time. So it says to bring that water bath water up to near boiling, and then you're going to set all of these jars down into that near boiling water and start the timer immediately. So I think that is close to open kettle as I'm going to get with these, because I'm not doing open kettle on these. And I am just placing them straight into the water bath, and I'll be able to start timing very quickly after I set these half pint jars down in the rack. The reason for it is so they don't become mushy. Often when you do pickles, when you can pickles, if you water bath them, they become mushy. And that is a texture I'm not happy with. I don't like. Oh, I'm showing you the red pepper there, so you know that those are the spicy one. And I don't like a mushy pickle pepper. I don't like them mushy. So I'm following this just to make sure that they don't end up mushy. Once I drop these down into the canner, then I'll start the timer the minute it starts boiling. And actually, I will start the timer the minute I set down because it is so close to boiling. I already start seeing the bubbles coming up from the boiling water bath. Now they won't be as crisp, obviously, as store-bought. But because of what we're going to be using them with, I think they're going to be great. Here they are. They're all loaded. I am setting it down into the water bath. The water will go over them. I'm taking it nice and slow, and I've got about 2 inches of water over the jars. And you can see I'm pointing, it's already starting to boil. So I am going to set my timer fairly quickly here. I just want to make sure that it is, there are little boiling motion. I set it for 11 minutes, but it's actually 10 minutes. There we go. I'm going to bring it down to 10 minutes, and I'm going to start the water bath canning. It is now done with the 10 minutes, and I'm pulling those out because I don't want those to set any longer than necessary in that boiling water. I did leave it set for a little bit for those the water to cool down to temp, or come down in temperature a little bit before I lifted them out. And then I'm going to leave these set there to cool a little bit. I don't want to cause any thermal shock or anything like that. And as I'm doing this, I'm getting some other things going in the background for the next video. And I'm also doing blueberries. I think you can see in the left-hand side of the screen as well. I'm trying to do as much as I can today. So here I am finishing up, and I'm trying to pry that first jar out of there without knocking any of the jars. And I'm gently bringing those out, and there we go. I see I've tipped one a little bit. There we go. I tip it back up, and I pull these jars out of the water bath, and I have finished up, and here it is. Again, thanks everyone for joining, and as always, be blessed and laugh as much as you